All right, folks, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. We'll be joined by Michael Ledeen in just a moment. And it's very interesting what's going on. The president today speaking at the American Legion, talking about Veterans Affairs, and we had a report released today regarding Veterans Affairs. But the president really reverting back to what he said, you know, before the beheading, what he said prior to our first airstrikes against ISIS, and talking about how we're going to take care of our embassies and defend our embassies and defend our people. And I just, as we get ready to go into Michael Ledeen, let's watch President Obama from earlier today.
As Commander-in-Chief, the security of the American people is my highest priority, and that's why, with the brutal terrorist group ISIL advancing in Iraq, I have authorized targeted strikes to protect our diplomats and military advisors who are there. American combat troops will not be returning to fight in Iraq, will not allow the United States to be dragged back into another ground war in Iraq, because ultimately it is up to the Iraqis to bridge their differences and secure themselves.
All right, so ultimately it's up to the Iraqi people. Ultimately, it's up to the Iraqi people. How could the Iraqi people handle ISIS? Now, I know he might be talking about the fact that we will, you know, give weapons to the Iraqi army and give some weapons, more weapons to the Kurds, and the Kurds have requested a lot more weapons than we've been willing to give them so far. Okay, so let me show you one more cut here from President Obama, and then we'll get to Michael Ledeen.
And more broadly, the crisis in Iraq underscores how we have to meet today's evolving terrorist threat. The answer is not to send in large-scale military deployments that overstretch our military and lead for us occupying countries for a long period of time and end up feeding extremism. Rather, our military action in Iraq has to be part of a broader strategy to protect our people and support our partners to take the fight to ISIL.
All right, so let's get the take of Dr. Michael Ledeen, historian, former consultant to the National Security Council, the Department of State, the Department of Defense, and Freedom Scholar at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Hello, Doctor.
Hello. Happy Tuesday.
Yes, happy Tuesday indeed, and thank you for joining us. A big fan, and it's always a pleasure. Let me ask you, when you hear the president referring to ISIS, saying it's up to the Iraqi people, even at this point, and saying that we shouldn't have any large-scale military, he calls it deployment and occupation because it feeds extremists. I mean, you know, it's his way of saying we're not going to get more militarily involved and really go after ISIS, and he's framing it as a false choice, I think. Nobody's saying we need to go in and occupy a country, but even his mindset that if we did something more extreme, it would feed extremism and create more terrorists. This just shows a fundamental lack of understanding or unwillingness to admit that he does understand what the problem is, correct?
Well, yes and no. It's Al-Qaeda all over again. The words he's now using to describe the Islamic State are the same words that he and his people have used to talk about Al-Qaeda over the years. And he does not want to face the fact that we're in a global war and that there are people who just hate us, and it doesn't matter what we do or don't do. They want us dead or dominated. So, you know, our response to this so far, at least, reminds me of one of Secretary Haig's greatest lines. He once asked me to look into some covert action that CIA was planning. And he said, look, what I'm afraid of here is that it'll be too big to hide and too small to succeed.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm worried that we're headed with these characters right now. I mean, ISIS is really having a great success, and its recruitment record right now is phenomenal. And a lot of people don't seem to get the point that beheading video of Foley is a recruitment video, and it goes out to people who want to do that and want to be involved in things like that. And there's a lot of people out there who really love it and yearn to behead infidels.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's sick but true. And what about the fact that the terrorist involved in the beheading who spoke in that video, gave a direct message to Barack Obama? I mean, it's not. I don't think it's like the equivalent of if Osama bin Laden did the same in English, because I don't know that this terrorist has that stature yet. But nonetheless, it kind of was a new plateau of sorts. What's your take on that?
Well, they're compulsive truth tellers in that way. That is, their ultimate target is us, and so they say it. And they say it, A, because they mean it, B, because they think it will intimidate us, and C, because it gets them more members.
And why do you think the State Department still insists that we are not at war with ISIS, that ISIS is, more of a localized problem? In fact, even the president again today saying that it's the people of Iraq that have to reject and contain ISIS.
Yeah, but they can't. They've proven that.
Right, right.
The only ones who have a chance are the Kurds, and he's not willing to
arm them,
give the Kurds the wherewithal that they need in order to beat these guys.
All right, so someone of your stature with all your credentials, I'm just so curious to ask you, what do you think is behind it then? I mean, I know detachment and not caring and maybe a lack of fundamental understanding, but this president has been pretty consistent when it comes to the Middle East and turning it into what it's been turned into today. It's either totally by accident, or it's partially calculated and partially by accident, or totally calculated. I mean, he's not a dumb man, yet here again, we see a threat, an obvious threat, according to Democratic senators, according to his own, this is what I don't get, according to his own Secretary of Defense and others, saying they're a threat to the United States, and he, every time he comes out, starts talking about how, it's the Iraqis' problem. So what's going on here?
Well, he likes those people. He likes people who hate the United States. I mean, that's one very consistent theme. He is part of a whole generation that has been educated in some of our best schools and universities, who believe that the United States is the root cause of most of the bad things that happen in the world. And so, for example, he has from day -1, since during the campaign of 2008, he has been trying to make a deal with Iran, and he accepts Iran's criticism of the United States. He thinks it's legitimate, and he's been trying to show them that his United States, his government, is different. It's a friend of theirs and wants to work with them, and that is really the hardcore of his policy. He wants to associate with people who hate what America has done in the past as much as he does. And that should come as no surprise. Look at the texts that we use in our schools these days. Look at what our kids are taught. Look at what we're told about American history, about all the terrible things that the United States has done. He believes that. That's one very consistent theme in his rhetoric and in his actions.
And so do you believe that the supporting of the ousting of Mubarak and this insertion of the Muslim Brotherhood, and if he had his ways, they'd still be in there, I believe, fighting alongside in certain respects in Syria and Libya, Al-Qaeda members and God knows who, and now ignoring the ISIS threat because we know it was discussed at congressional hearings years ago, and we know that even more recently there were warnings that they were on the march from Syria into Iraq. I mean, do you believe that any of this is purposeful?
Well, some of it is purposeful, which is that he sympathizes with people who are enemies of the United States.
Even terrorists, Doctor? Even terrorists?
Well, what's Iran? Iran is the world's biggest sponsor of terror. And he certainly wants to be in cahoots with them. He certainly wants to have a rapprochement with them. Nothing is clearer than that. So, yes.
All right. Well, very interesting. Now, you got a great piece here which just speaks to the lunacy. And you end it by saying that if you think they're nuts, they are nuts. Talk about this Save Mickey from the Terrorists, about Mickey Mouse and Saudi Arabia and the textbooks and what they teach about how Mickey Mouse should be killed in all cases.
Well, mice are unclean according to Sharia law, And this leading cleric in Saudi Arabia, who was for a while a diplomat at the Saudi embassy in Washington, came out and said mice are unclean, mice have to be eliminated, and Mickey Mouse is the most important mouse, and so he has to be eliminated. So he's calling for the assassination of Mickey Mouse.
It is.
And, and so I said, well, suppose it's real, and suppose there's a team of assassins out to get Mickey. Where will they go? Where will they find him? The Disney Studios, Disneyland, Disney TV, what? Where? And security people have to take this seriously because they're crazy. And if they think they can find Mickey Mouse and kill him, they might.
Well, you wrote a great piece about this at pjmedia.com, where you contribute regularly. And it's when I first saw it, I immediately harkened back to how Hamas TV or Palestinian TV showed their version, a Mickey Mouse character talking about how you got to kill the Jew.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It's insane. It really is. Doctor, great talking to you. I hope you'll come back.
Great, love to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Michael Ledeen, ladies and gentlemen, former consultant to the National Security Council, Department of State, Department of Defense, and Freedom Scholar at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. And of course, as if all that wasn't enough, as I mentioned, you could find him at pjmedia.com. Very, very interesting. All right, folks, we have a lot more ahead. And when we return, we'll be joined by Fox News senior political analyst and former national campaign director for the Reagan-Bush campaign. And I'm talking about the one and only Ed Rollins. It's all straight ahead right here on the Steve Malzberg Show.